Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Simply Hooked, a crochet podcast. I am your host, Marcy, a crochet artist, mom, and creative entrepreneur. Join me as we explore the art of crochet and the beauty of being uniquely made. So if you have been wondering how to turn your love for crochet into a profitable side hustle, you are in for a treat today. I am going to break down the essential steps to transition your crochet hobby into a side hustle, including some legal setup, sales tax, where to sell, and how to get started the right way without feeling overwhelmed. So grab a crochet project and a comfy spot, and let's dive in. So if you are listening to this episode, I'm going to assume that you're an official crochet addict that needs to do something with all the crocheted goodies that have built up in your house. I totally get this. I have been there. I'm still there, actually. This is usually where it all begins. We learn this beautiful art, we get addicted, and we begin making anything and everything we can think of. Then you find that the corner in your room or closet you've been filling is starting to become overwhelmed with your pile of stuffed animals, scarves, hats, cozies, blankets, whatever you've been making. You've maxed out your custom order request for friends and family. So now what? It is time to get these handmade treasures into the hands of people you do not know. So if your plate is already full with a full-time job that you love, or kiddos to care for at home, and everything else in life that keeps us busy, but you're also interested in having a few extra bucks in your pocket every month while continuing to feed your crochet addiction, then now might be a good time to transition from hobby to side hustle. I first want to emphasize the difference between a side hustle and a full-blown business. These are two very different things, and you have to know where your starting point is before you move forward. I would consider a crochet side hustle to be a very part-time job. So you're crocheting every day as you would do anyways, but maybe you have time in the weekends that you can attend craft markets to sell your products, or maybe you have some extra time to set up an Etsy shop and run that. If this is you, then a side hustle is going to be a great fit. If you already have a crochet side hustle and want to turn that into a full-time profitable business, then that will be a different episode, which I will record shortly. These two require different strategies. So, if you are ready to dip your toes in the water of business and get room back in your house, then here we go. Let's create a side hustle. What I recommend doing first is really in the weeds and not fun to talk about, but it is essential, even for a side hustle. And if you are anything like me, you want to get the hard stuff over with first. I also need to add a disclaimer that this is not official legal advice. These are just the steps I took, and likely the steps you would need to take too. So number one, we've got to start with taxes. From what I understand, if your side hustle makes more than $400 a year, then you'll have to start paying taxes on the income that you earn from it. So I would certainly hope your side hustle makes more than $400 a year. So we're going to assume everyone needs to do this part. And the first piece is to understand that you would be considered a sole proprietorship. This is assuming you don't want to go through all the paperwork of an LLC or anything like that. That's more so if you're kind of transitioning to a full-time business. But if you are just selling crochet on the weekends and on Etsy, then a sole proprietorship is really all you need to be. I do not believe there's any paperwork to officially become a sole proprietor, but you would need to report the business income at the end of the year when you do your taxes. And when they ask you what type of business you have, that is when you would select sole proprietorship. The next thing I would do is visit your county's Register of Deeds website to register your business and get a sales tax ID number. If you plan to sell products in person at markets, then you will need to pay sales tax to the state and whatever county the market was held in. You typically report sales tax every quarter. If you're selling online, this is less of a concern because most online marketplaces like Etsy and Amazon take the sales tax out of your profits and pay it to the states themselves, which is wonderful. So sales tax really only plays a role when you're selling in person. Most craft markets even require that you share your sales tax ID number on the vendor application to even apply to be in the market. So it's definitely a step you're going to need to take. I would also recommend setting up a separate checking account. Since it's just a side hustle, it doesn't need to be a fancy business account with a large monthly fee. It just needs to be an extra checking account, just so you can keep things separate from your personal funds. So back to the sales tax for a second. So it took me a long time to figure this out for some reason, but I hope that this saves you some time. There are two options for collecting sales tax when you're selling in person at craft markets. You can either charge the customer the additional 7% or whatever it is in your area, or you cannot charge the customer, but then take the 7% out of your profits for the day and pay it yourself. I have done this both ways, and I've got to say, as much as it hurts to take the 7% out of my profits, I have found that to be way easier than having the customer pay. I don't know what it is about craft markets, but shoppers just don't always think of it the same as shopping in a regular big box store when it comes to sales tax. In my experience, when a customer sees something that they want to buy and it is marked $20, and if they are paying with cash, they will hand you a $20 bill and think that's it. Then there's this kind of awkward exchange of, well, it's actually $23.78 because of taxes or whatever the amount is. And half of them might say, oh yeah, of course, okay. And then they'll pay it. Or and the other half are like, they might gruff a little and be like, oh, okay. And then I feel like I've annoyed them, which I know that is not my burden to carry, but it's still just this awkward exchange that is just no fun. Then you have to do the math on how much change you owe them, and you have to carry a bunch of heavy coins around to ensure that you give them the exact change back. Again, I know this is not my burden to bear, but I would rather have a happy customer and a smooth, fast transaction than worry about keeping the 7%. It's just an added step that complicates the transaction, in my opinion. Especially if you have a line forming of people wanting to check out. It's just easier to pay the sales tax yourself. The other tax thing you have to think about are estimated taxes for the IRS. A good rule of thumb is to set aside at least 20% of your profits for estimated taxes. The IRS requires individuals to pay estimated taxes quarterly. And it's better to pay these in the smaller increments 4 times throughout the year than to realize you owe thousands of dollars when you're doing your taxes. Also, depending on your state, because some states don't have income tax, but if your state has income tax, then you will also have to set aside estimated taxes for the state as well. I believe where I'm at, it's like 4.5% or 5%. So essentially, you're setting aside like 25% total to pay both federal and state taxes. Earlier, I recommended opening another checking account for business income and expenses, but honestly, you might want to open 2. One is where all of the business income is deposited, and the other is where you set aside this money for the sales tax and the estimated taxes, so that every quarter, when it is time to pay it, there it is. You don't have to go looking for it. You've set it aside and you are ready to go. So every quarter, I log in to the North Carolina Department of Revenue and I pay my sales tax if I did a craft market that quarter. and I pay my estimated tax to the state. Then I log into the IRS and pay my federal estimated taxes. And this can all be done online, which is great. They make it pretty easy to do. This is a nuisance, but it's necessary. And I think setting aside the money for taxes as you make it is just the best way to stay on top of it. And it's a lot less stressful than to see that you owe thousands of dollars when you do your taxes at the end of the year. All right. The next big thing I would recommend when starting your side hustle is setting up a selling platform that accepts credit and debit cards. Most people pay with cards, in my experience. So you are going to want to get a Square reader or something like that to collect the payments. I paid $50 on Amazon for a Square reader that allows customers to either swipe, do the chip reader, and it even does Apple Pay. So after you receive your Square reader in the mail, you just go to square.com to set up an account and sync everything. I would also recommend setting up a Venmo account if you don't already have one. This is becoming more popular. I've had several customers request to pay that way. Then, of course, for the people that pay with cash, you'll need to get a money bag and keep some 5s and 1s in it for a market. And of course, if you plan on charging the customer sales tax, you'll want to have rolls of coins too. The next thing to transition to a side hustle, you need to have business cards. This is a must. I have always used Vistaprint to print my business cards. Vistaprint has a designed feature in it, but I personally like to design them in Canva. Then I upload the design to Vistaprint. You'll just have to look up the dimensions to make sure that your business card design in Canva matches Vistaprint. I believe the standard size is 3.5 inches wide by 2 inches tall. And Canva, if you don't have an account, get an account. It is amazing. And they do have a free option. I pay for the pro option, which is only $120 a year, but it's worth every penny because I use it every day, multiple times a day. I'm really surprised they don't charge more, actually. So I recommend ordering at least 250 cards to get started because you'll want to ship these out with every Etsy order and put them in every bag at the market and put them out on the tables at the market. Another quick tip, if you do have an Etsy shop and you're attending a craft market in person, create a QR code for your Etsy shop and put it on the back of the business cards. So then customers can find you quickly after they leave the market. All right, the next thing you need to know is where to sell. If you are only doing a side hustle, I recommend these 3 places to sell: Etsy, craft markets, and posting in local Facebook groups. Let's start with Etsy. This is the perfect online marketplace for handmade items. Setup is pretty easy, and you get access to buyers that are already searching for your products. Getting your shop and your products to show up in their search results is going to take time. So when you get on Etsy, be in it for the long haul and it will pay off. To get yourself started, what I would do is if you have a friend or family member asking you to make something for them, which should be easy, this is usually the case for anyone with a handmade business. You always have friends and family that kind of help jumpstart you with custom orders. But if you do, I recommend creating an Etsy listing and asking them to purchase via Etsy. This will help jumpstart your sales and, of course, ask them to leave a 5-star review. These are the 2 things that Etsy wants to see on a regular basis from shops: sales and 5-star reviews. So the more you get, the more listings will be shown in the search results. I could honestly dedicate an entire episode on how to optimize your Etsy shop, which I will probably do in the near future. But for this episode, just to get you started with a side hustle, I think I'm going to stop there. You just need to know you need to be on Etsy. On to craft markets. This will be the bread and butter of your side hustle. People at craft markets are ready to buy handmade, and they expect to pay a little more than they would at a big box store. So craft markets are full of your ideal customer. I also want to make a big distinction here. When you are looking for markets to apply to, you'll want to make sure they have the words craft market in them. In my experience, farmers markets are simply not the same. Customers that attend farmers markets are much different than customers that attend craft markets. People that go to farmers markets just want to leisurely stroll on a Saturday morning, walk their dog, maybe buy a vegetable or two, and a small jar of honey. These are not people that go to a market ready to shell out $50 to $100 on handmade items. You might find a rare gem of a customer like that at a farmer's market, but there are not many. I have done my fair share of standing around with little to no sales at farmers markets versus making $2,000 at a craft market. True story. So you want to spend your time wisely, and I recommend investing your time in events that say craft market on them. Okay, I will get off my soapbox about that. I'm sure there are some crocheters that have had lots of sales at farmers markets, but in the 10 years I've done them, that just has not been my experience, and I can only share my experience with you. I do have one exception to this rule, and that would be in December when farmers markets typically have craft markets. Usually in December, farmers markets will open the applications up to more craft vendors so that they can offer people more like giftable type items. So that would be the one exception. I think it's okay to do a farmer's market 1 or 2 weeks before Christmas, but otherwise I would not waste your time on those. Okay, number 3, local Facebook groups. This is one I stumbled upon by accident, but it really paid off. So log into your Facebook and see if your city or town has some sort of community page where people are posting about all sorts of random community things. I decided to do this on a whim one night, wondering if anything would come of it. I believe I posted a photo of one of my amigurumi animals, and I just said, hey, I'm a local crochet artist. I design fun crochet patterns. If anyone else locally crochets, here's my website, check out my patterns. That was it. It was just kind of an introduction post, and hey, if anyone else crochets, here's some new patterns to try. And that post went bananas. It got so many likes, shares, and comments. I got at least 5 custom orders from it for finished products. I had a local yarn shop reach out to me about teaching an amigurumi class in their shop. I also had 2 more local businesses contact me about teaching crochet classes in their shops, and I got a ton of visitors to my website for the next 3 days and even sold a few patterns. And the people that left comments were some of my customers from the Christmas market I did a couple months prior, which was so cool because they would say, oh, I bought that pig from you at Christmas for my granddaughter and she loved it, real quality work. So people were essentially leaving 5-star reviews about my products and business in the comments. All of the engagement that post got really fed right into the Facebook algorithm. And that post traveled for a solid 3 days. It was great. So yes, find a local community Facebook group. Post a photo of something you have made with a URL to your Etsy shop and just be authentic. Just say, hey, I am so-and-so. I crochet blank. If you are local and love handmade things, check out my shop. And that's all it has to be. This is also a great way to just connect with other crocheters in your community. They might have crochet nights or knit nights at a local restaurant. So it's just a fun way to network and connect with people. All right, starting to wrap up here. I want to add a few more odds and ends just to keep in mind as you start your side hustle. Find a safe place to store all of your receipts for expenses. All the yarn you buy, all the supplies. You'll want to be able to write off as many expenses as you can at the end of the year because your expenses are subtracted from the income your business makes, and then you only have to pay taxes on the difference. So you might find that 20% you were setting aside for federal taxes, you might get some of it back depending how many expenses you had. But just keep a safe place for all of those receipts. Another tip for Etsy: if you are selling finished products that you need to ship, add the cost of shipping into the total price of the item so that you can get the free shipping label on your listing. People love getting free shipping, especially when they are used to shopping on Amazon. So just add that cost to your total so you're not out of the money, but you're also helping boost your listing a little bit. I only ship within the US because the cost of international shipping is so high. But the US Etsy market is so large, so don't feel like you're limiting yourself if you do this. And the cost of shipping really depends on weight more than anything. So for my small, lightweight items like a mug cozy, I'll add $4.50 to my total because that is usually the cost to ship it around the US. For larger items like amigurumi that might weigh a pound or two, I'll add $8 to $10 to that total to cover shipping. My last quick Etsy tip for new shops is to invest in a DSLR camera because you're going to want to take nice photos of your products. Put your product near a window or even outside. I take all of my product photos on my front porch, but not in direct sunlight. You want it to be sunny outside, but you want your product to be in the shade for a perfect photo. That first photo of your listing is your biggest selling point when people are scrolling through search results, so you really want it to stand out and be high quality. All right, friends, so those are my tips for making the transition from hobby to side hustle. I hope that this was helpful. If you get some good momentum going and want to scale the business even further, stick around. I am going to record an episode in the very near future that goes in depth about the steps to take to grow even more. So I hope this was helpful and that it gave you the confidence and tools that you need to start turning your hobby into some extra income. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Connect with me on Instagram at simplyhooked1 or check out my crochet patterns and resources at marcymade.co. Also, check the show notes for a free donkey pattern that I wrote and a crochet starter kit for beginners that are interested in learning to crochet. It includes a video tutorial teaching the basics. Until next time, my friends, keep creating, keep dreaming, and remember, you were uniquely made for something beautiful.